Hello, welcome to week 3 of Hotpot Talk Season 2. I am Jen Sunshine here with my dear friend and longtime creative partner, David Ng. You might know us as the co-founders and co-artistic directors of Love Intersections, a media arts collective that produces documentary films about QT BIPOCs. We are also members of the Vancouver Artists Labor Union Cooperative, also known as Value Co-op. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that David and I are beaming this live from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. In light of recent events, we also want to highlight the work of the land defenders at Fairy Creek. There is a GoFundMe that organizers have put together to support Indigenous land defenders, and the link will be dropped into the chat. Hotpot Talks, you know this, is a weekly series live streaming to YouTube and Facebook every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, where we have free-flowing conversations with artists, activists, chefs, performers, poets, community organizers about what it means to be an artist facing today's realities, what ethical responsibilities do we have as artists, all the while sharing our favorite hotpot ingredients. This season, we continue these conversations on topics ranging from anti-Asian racism, BIPOC futurity, Chinatown solidarity, diasporic food cultures, and interrogating the boundaries between everyday activism, fine art, and cultural work.
So why Hotpot Talks? As Jen mentioned, Jen and I founded Love Intersections on the core philosophies of collaboration, invitation, and doing things in relationship with communities to tell stories that intervened on systems such as race, gender, sexuality, class, and ableism. And a core part of our work as social practice artists has been to interrogate the boundaries of art, philosophy, community work, and activism. And so when the pandemic happened earlier last year, and a lot of our creative practices that involved working with communities took a pause, we imagined Hotpot Talks as a way to continue this dialogue on art and cultural production with guests that we wanted to connect with that had contributed to this work. And so we're really excited to be talking to Kendell Yan, aka Queen Maiden China, and Van Dang, aka Shay Dior, from the all-Asian drag family, the House of Rice, both who have been pushing the boundaries of art, drag, and performance. Before we begin, I thought it would be fun to share a little bit of background of some of our marketing material. These Chinese characters that you see that are always at the back of our streaming platform actually say, "Have you eaten today?" And they were actually, so they say, "Have you eaten today?" And it's the theme of our Hotpot Talk series. And it's actually calligraphy that was rendered from Jen's dad, who actually did the calligraphy for us.
So he was a calligraphy artist all growing up, and I just remember him teaching calligraphy to all the white kids in the suburb, like the cul-de-sac that in the neighborhood that we grew up in. And last week we made a joke about commodification of our art as artists. This week I'm going to make a joke that I'm always exploiting my father's labor.
We also have our Have You Eaten Today totes that are on sale on the Value Co-op website as well. So buy it.
So I want to thank our incredible team, Cameron, who is our lead project coordinator, and Lamia, who is our lead social media coordinator, who make Hotpot Talks a reality. So without further ado, I want to give a warm welcome to Kendell Yan and Van Dang. Hello.
Hi.
Hey guys.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us today.
Yeah, we're so
excited.
Yeah. Well, we thought, why don't we start right off? Right before we started broadcasting, we were talking about Hotpot. Why don't we start with that? What's your favorite Hotpot memory, or your favorite thing about Hotpot?
For me, I didn't grow up eating a lot of Hotpot. So actually it's like very recent, which is actually spurred because of Hotpot Talks.
Oh.
So I started watching Hotpot Talks in the pandemic, and was thinking like, wow, I haven't had a Hotpot in so long. And like, because it's such a communal thing, it was like, oh, I wish I could have that. And my roommate actually was just like, stuck that in his mind. And then for my birthday, which was in November, bought me like the kerosene stove and like a big hot pot with the two sides.
Yeah.
And so we've been having hot pot like all the time, like bi-weekly. And it's been really nice to like share those meals while we have the time in our house to do that. And I live in Chinatown directly, just around the corner is Carly Hotpot on Georgia. So like all of the ingredients are like just outside.
Amazing.
On, like my doorstep, basically. Yeah. So that's like, I don't know. It's really kept me sane.
Yeah. How about you, Shay?
Mine's like the complete opposite. I grew up eating a lot of hot pot. We would always, especially in the winter, we would just go like hot pot crazy just because it just like warms the soul. With my family, a lot of my favorite memories, I think, were just like, because we would always have conversations around dinner, but I think because my parents owned a nail salon, so we always had conversations about business and about like the day and everything. But hot pot was always like more about the food and just about each other because we're always passing the ingredients around.
Yeah.
So it was less about like the work and more about like, oh, like what do you want to eat? Like, oh, I'll like help you serve. I'll help you grab that or whatever.
Yeah.
And then since I haven't lived at home for I guess 10 years now, and now I'm 5 years ago, I moved across the country. So I'm in Vancouver now and I'm not in Ontario. So I haven't had as much hot pot experiences. It's usually just with friends when we're like going out or like having home cooked meals sometimes, but it's not as frequent as it would be.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was like, oh, I should brush up on my hot pot knowledge because it's been so long since I've had a lot of Vietnamese hot pots. So I was like doing a lot of like looking up different kinds of hot pot that I used to have. Yeah, Vietnamese, there's like, I feel like there's different kinds. Like we have like hot sour. We have, a lot of our, like we've got like tom yum style, hot and sour. My favorite though is Vietnam Chao, which is a duck and fermented bean. So it's actually using like, instead of chicken stock or like meat stock, they'll use like coconut water and fermented bean. And then you'll also use taro root. So the longer it cooks, the creamier and thicker the soup gets.
Yum.
And then you like slow roast the duck and then the duck just like keeps all the flavor in, but then
Oh my God.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
When the pandemic's over, let's do it.
Yes, because the reason why we asked this question is because virtually every single person we've asked this has like a different hot pot story or how they prepare and experience hot pot.
Yeah.
It's so different from one person to the next. And so, yeah, I was very curious specifically about like what specifically Vietnamese hot pot is like.
Because I was like Kendell. I didn't really grow up with it. I think I mentioned this in a past episode, but it was just like for my family. It was just so excessive to have so many different ingredients for like one meal. But I wanted to share. There was a funny story that I was remembering. So my dad used to work for the health protection branch, like food inspectors, right? And so he had. So when I discovered hot pot, I was like, I think I was in my late teens or like early 20s or something, and I wanted to have it all the time. So whenever family friends would come over, I would like be like, oh, let's have hot pot, right? But so like if you've ever seen the way like you know like the really thin meat, right? Like I dip it for like 5 seconds, right? Yeah. Until there's just like a little, so that it's still soft.
That's all
right?
you need. Yeah.
Yeah. But so we had some of my dad's food inspector friends come over. who were white.
They're all having heart attacks.
And they were like, wait for it to boil. Wait for it to boil. I was like, no, it's gonna be all like cardboard.
Oh my God.
It was just so funny because like, and the way hot pot is, like there's no, like it's just, you just keep going and you dip it and and Jen and I were like, I was reminded of this story because Jen and I were talking like during the pandemic, like, wow, hot pot is really not like the most COVID safe.
It's literally the opposite of COVID safe because you're sharing.
Yeah. And then it just reminded me of that story of just like, actually hot pot's probably not, it's probably a little bit. Yeah.
There's like another Vietnamese hot pot that's like beef, but it's like beef and vinegar. So it's like you want it to be like rare beef style. And like the other, like, so you do that. And then you can also at the same time, or like afterwards with like your leftover beef or whatever, use it for salad rolls. And then it's like, so you have hot pot and salad rolls. But also
that
COVID safe.
Like,
it's
no,
like extra not
out.
COVID safe. And you're touching them and you're touching and holding.
Yeah.
It's
like mega not COVID safe. It's a double
Yeah. I can only imagine the reaction of those food inspectors. How did the two of you meet?
We met at a family dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Christmas or
Thanksgiving?
It was around Thanksgiving. So I have a big family. I have two queer brothers. So it was one of my brothers, not Brandon. His name's Justin, and his partner loves to host and do like huge, like holiday dinners. And Van was dating Connor. A friend of my brother's best friend. So Van like tagged along because the style of the dinner is like bring everyone.
Yeah.
Because we're having like a giant table of so much food. And yeah, Van came along and I think they were basically just like, oh, Kendell is like interested in drag and you do drag. So like put you together. And then then
I was literally like
hit it off.
Oh, so what would your drag name be if you did drag? She's like Maiden China, and I literally dropped to the ground and I was like, ah!
Yeah.
I know this story because you've told the story and it's in Yellow Peril Queer Destiny.
Of it.
The snippet of it is so it was so you had a name already, but I didn't realize
I had because I loved drag and I wanted to do it, but I like didn't really have any queer friends. Like I didn't know the scene. And like the shows that I had seen, I was like so intimidated by the drag queens that I was watching perform. Cause I mean, and
you were also in the industry, so you didn't have time.
Yeah, exactly. I was cooking at the time. So I was like working like 12-hour days. Which there was overlap there, and that was a wild time in my life trying to do drag 12-hour days at a brunch restaurant.
At a brunch restaurant.
Oh my god!
But yeah, the name just like popped into my head one day because like I would play this game with like one of my friends who was watching Drag Race, and we would just like come up with drag names and puns, and then that one came into my head, and I was like saving that it's going to be mine, but I don't know when, and then she came in and changed my life.
Aww.
Wow.
So you guys were like drag set up, kind of.
Yeah. It was an arranged marriage.
My partner was like, my partner at the time was literally just like, I don't know much about drag. Here's Kendell.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Really cute.
Yeah, that's cute. Oh,
what a cutest story.
But it was like magical because like for me, before going to this like dinner, my whole life had been like, if I was exploring my queer side or something, it would be like queer friends, queer setting, queer scene, straight friends, like straight people, straight scene. At this dinner, it was literally like everyone was mixed match, and it was like the most normal feeling ever. And it was like my first like step into like this new world of like how everyone can coexist, and it was like really beautiful.
Wow. I'm trying to think of like, because now I'm thinking, because I feel like oftentimes I have the opposite experience too. Like I'm just so like everything's just. Jen and I have this joke like by default everything's queer.
Yeah, like,
queer
I feel that
proven
too.
Otherwise.
I have that mentality too.
Right.
Really.
Anyone I'm like queer.
Yeah.
But I think it's like because I have there's multiple queer family members in my family, and then my brother's husband, who was the one who arranged this dinner, also has a queer brother. So there's a lot of just like of queerness in our families, but then the families are like largely by default like heterosexual, like the parents and then cousins and like all that kind of stuff, right? So it's very blended.
Right.
But I don't know. I also just assume that everyone is gay or queer, or like
to some extent.
I'm trying to
just a little bit, even a little bit.
Okay, so tell us about House of Rice, because I'm just fascinated by House of Rice.
What do you want to know?
Well, tell us the origin story of House of Rice and like the members, and
because you guys have you're huge. There's a big family now, right?
Like how many
I just keep popping
grains of rice
popping them out.
is in House of Rice?
Right now it's 10, but there's a 12th. There's an 11th one debuting soon.
So exciting!
Oh God, are we keeping this under a secret?
Is it a secret?
I don't know. I don't know if they want it to be a secret yet, so I'm just not gonna say it yet.
Yeah,
but they are
here, so.
But they are debuting. So I'm curating a show for Vancouver Vancouver Mural Festival. It's a pop-up patio outdoor performance show, so I'll be debuting them there. And it's August 6th, so put that in your calendars.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be debuting the 12th member.
That's incredible. That's all. It's like
It started off with this one.
Wow.
And now there's 11 more.
Yeah. How do you?
So Maiden was.
Do people like reach out to you? Are these people that you know? Do you like how does the family grow? I'm just curious.
Oh, that's actually, yeah. I will walk you through the process. It's not really like, for me, with Kendell, it was like we were just drag daughter and mother. It wasn't like a house or anything like that. And then I had met these two who just like had come to their first local drag show. They're from Maiden China. Valak and Nikita, they had never seen drag in person before, and they came to one of my shows. Fell in love. I think you were also at that show. So they were obsessed with us, and they had never seen drag in person. And to see two Asian drag queens in person was like huge for them. So they like just started calling me mom for like months, and just like telling me, like sending me makeup updates and stuff. And I didn't even know that like I was going to be a mother of more. But they just kept calling me mom. I was like, I want to debut next Pride. I was like, okay, let's make it happen. And then Miracle Whip also came, had been in the community for a while and dancing for a lot of drag queens. And then came to me saying that they want to like be in the spotlight and be the performer like in the center. So at that point I was like, oh, there's like 5 of us. That sounds like it could be a house. So I chose the House of Rice because I think rice is it's like a way of like, it has such limitless potential to be like so many different things: rice cake, rice paper, rice noodles. And I think that's how I see Asians. Like Asians have all this potential, and sometimes they're like pigeonholed into like one specific way, or like stereotyped in one specific way, where we have all this potential. So that's why I chose rice as the house name.
I didn't know that.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, rice is just like the most sacred food for me anyways, and for other Asians, I would imagine, it's the one thing you just can't, like every grain needs to be finished. I used to get in so much trouble if I didn't finish the entire bowl of rice. Like even one grain of rice cannot be wasted, because it's just that mentality growing up, navigating hunger and poverty, and rice is just so integral to the identity. Yeah.
That's why I don't know if you guys remember a couple of years ago, I was so annoyed by this article, this like wellness article that came out that said like a bowl of rice equals drinking a can of Coke. I was like, that's just not, like my grandmother had rice 3 meals a day. I don't think it's just not possible.
I just really don't think like a highly processed sugary cola drink is the same as a grain.
It literally can clean like grime off of like metal. What?
That's so weird.
That's absurd.
What?
That is an attack. That is
sacrilegious.
I'm wondering, I was also remembering, just riffing off of what this conversation around House of Rice, we touched on this a little bit. Well, we talked about this when we had our check-in, and then we kind of touched on it in Yellow Peril, but sort of the category of Asian. And I know that when you were, we had a conversation when we filmed Yellow Peril about, you were thinking through like also, when you were putting together an Asian house of drag house, what does that mean? Is, because Asian is such a large category. I don't know. Can we talk a little bit about that? How has that been for your process for doing drag, and I'm just thinking of Ricecake and the House of Rice. What have those conversations been like?
I think like it also comes with what we were talking about earlier about how I like expand the house and like how I get new members. A lot of times for me it's just like when I see a performer that like has potential or like inspires me to want to like give back to them and want to like try and help them grow their drag and grow their artistry. Then a lot of times I will like contact them and just ask them if they want to go for food, and then just because food I think is like like Hotpot is like the best like medium for conversation. It just like helps you just ease into like talking about anything and everything. And I have so much fun. Well, I have so much fun eating, but I also have so much fun talking to these folks and like learning about them through these dinners and these lunches. And then from there, for me, I'm very vibe based. So I like, as much like I want to make sure that like regardless of like which Asian they are and like where they're originally from, I like want to just make sure that the vibe will mesh well with the rest of the family. And like even if it doesn't mesh, I will still like completely give like so much support to these performers and these artists, because I think we should all just be uplifting each other in our communities. And I'm always like sharing tips and supporting and stuff, even if I don't think that's like the perfect fit for the family. But with all the people that have joined afterwards, a lot of it has been like communal, like, or like have been one-on-one dinners and lunches. And then we've even had like huge dim sum dinners as like a family of like 11 of us. And like we made it work out. Like before the pandemic started, we had like maybe 3 or 4 post Ricecake dim sums.
It was really nice.
And it was like 11 of us managed to come out or something like that. And we would just have like a 2-hour, 3-hour like meal together. And it was just like beautiful.
Goosebumps. This is amazing.
Yeah. And I think like a big part of it is like, I want to provide these platforms to showcase the other cultures within the Asian diaspora.
So I'm curious how, like, can you run us through the process, like how you begin the artistic conceptualization of a number, for example, like from the music to the moves.
This question's always like, it really just like depends on, for me, it depends on the show. It depends on who I'll be performing for and what my feelings are at the moment and what's inspiring me at the moment. Because sometimes sometimes like depending on the show or performance, it like will be song first and whatever song is inspiring me and I just really want to do it at the moment. Or if it's like a show where I want to show more of my emotions and it's like a sad, like I'm feeling in a mood where I just want to like live in this like sadness and just like perform that, then I'll like go through like music first. But then if it's like a show that has like a theme in it, then I'll go based on like a concept of like an outfit theme and then base my song around that vibe. So there's no like one way process for me. It just depends on the factors of that performance.
Yeah, it's very contextual. I think I'm the same. It's almost like having like there are ideas that kind of like spontaneously will come to me because I will just like through listening to music or watching other people's art and kind of riffing on, themes and concepts that come up just like in my lived experience. But I'll sort of like keep them in almost like a little like Rolodex, like library, portfolio library, like in my head, so that when the context of like, for example, I'm working on right now on a documentary about Olive in Vancouver. Kind of like a segue, but they asked me to do a performance, and I was like, oh, that's a perfect example of when I could use, there's a song that I've always wanted to do, but it's like an older queer performer called Jabrias, but it's very like old school campy ballad that doesn't always fly in a lot of like bar contexts, right? So I'm like, oh, this is a perfect example where I can use that song. And then I'm like, what have I been doing lately? And I look back on like the performances, because I like to also build a lot of my performances as like, they kind of speak to each other, almost like a series. So thinking about a lot of the performances that I've been doing during the pandemic, which have been a lot to do with how I'm relating to my gender identity and like my trans identity, and this kind of like ritualistic kind of performance that I've been doing with like masking and unmasking and uncovering of like layers of skin. And so then I'm like, okay, so how do I like translate that into this project? So I think it's like similar, is like it's very contextual, but I think I always kind of have like something in my back pocket or like a list of songs that I want to do that I haven't done.
I'm wondering, and I'm gonna age myself now, but like like when I was a baby queer, like the type of work that the type of performances that you guys do that oft sometimes are very political, I never saw that in bars. Like at the Odyssey, that was never the case. And maybe it was the
Disclaimer:
shows.
this is not to offend any old queens.
No, so yes,
Oh, yeah,
not
yeah.
at all.
This
But
is
I'm
not a comparison.
curious. Like I'm curious about and also you guys are also performing like in place like outside of bars too, right? Like actually quite a bit of your like Van, you just mentioned I think Mural Fest. And so I'm wondering, like I'm just thinking about sort of, has there been, since you guys started drag, I forget how long you guys have been doing this for, but has there been like a shift of that type of energy too, of like,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say for sure. Like I mean, so it's like I think there's sometimes a conversation around like you definitely have a relationship to an audience, right? And you have a responsibility that like someone is coming out on, let's say like pre-pandemic times or post-pandemic times. It's like Saturday night, people are working all week. They want to come out, they want to have a nice time, they want to be entertained, right? So you don't necessarily always want to come out and just be like, these are all my feelings and I'm so sad and the world is terrible. But then it's like, there is a way to navigate and do a compromise where like things that are important and political can also be entertaining. And that's where that's like a very powerful thing when you can blend those two things, because then you have their attention and they're happy to be there and they're happy to be learning about it or talking about it. But then it's also not just a top 40 song.
That's right.
Or, and like you said, Jen, like I it's no diss on anyone who just wants to come out and is a great dancer and a great lip syncer and just wants to like have fun. But I think, making space for that in entertainment settings is really powerful. And since I've been doing drag for 5 years, and definitely like the scene has changed dramatically about what I think what people, because once you start doing that kind of stuff, then other performers are like, oh, I don't have to.
Well, you're giving people
save the song
permission
for not here.
Yeah.
Like
it's a very
you're
powerful
totally allowed
way
to do that.
Yeah.
I feel like for when I started, it was very focused on like R&B songs and like pop songs where I'm going to be dancing a lot. And then I feel like it was actually you that like got me to like think about like, oh, I can do more like powerful songs and like political songs. Like, and then like I had always wanted to do Listen by Beyonce. And then when I did Mr. Miss Cobalt, the finale, I like did Listen by Beyonce because I like was really in my feelings about like my parents not knowing about my performer side. And like, I really wanted to dedicate that to them. And that was like one of my favorite performances ever. It was just like the strong, I was like crying at the end of it. I looked at the crowd when I ended and everyone else was crying.
Truly.
Rose Butch in the judges seat was just like, and I was like, I just want to make Rose Butch cry.
I just won.
I was like, I don't care what the results are, but I made Rose Butch cry.
Oh my goodness, I have goosebumps. Thank you. So that's a really good segue, because Shay, I wanted to ask about your parents, but also what your childhood was like. Like, can you tell us about how and where you grew up, what your relationship with your family is like?
I'm pretty close with my family. Like I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario. And then I went to school in University of Toronto. So I lived in Toronto for 5 years and then I moved here. But yeah, in like Hamilton, it's more of like a suburban city. So my parents were kind of like workaholics. They just like, they wanted to provide and they wanted to just make sure that we, like my sisters and I were like, well taken care of. But that meant that I didn't get to see them a lot. Like they would come home at 9 p.m. pretty much every day. So I would go home. Like when I was younger, I would go to the nail salon after school and kind of spend time in there in like the downstairs, like staff area kind of thing. But then like when I got older, I would just go home on my own and just like sit in front of the TV, make instant noodles, and then like take care of myself until because my sisters were also helping my parents out at the salon when they were like in high school and stuff. So if I did get like, I always consider my sisters as my like second parents, because a lot of times they did take care of me and they taught me a lot. So we are really close. I treat them like my best friends. Like we have this group chat where even though I'm not in Ontario, I'll wake up to like 100 messages from them just acting as if they're chatting as if I'm still there. So it's really like, it was really sweet. I came up to I came out to my mom, I think, right before I left Toronto, because I didn't want her to like blame my moving to Toronto for me being queer.
Yeah.
Because she just didn't really understand, and she's like, they are like immigrants to Canada, so they don't understand a lot of like the progression and stuff. She kind of didn't really know how to take it, but she like a few days later she came around and told me like she still like loves me. But even 2 years later we weren't really able to talk about it, because I could tell that she had like was more upset at herself for not feeling comfortable with it. Not so much about me, but just she knew that she was not feeling the way that she should be feeling. So that was kind of like hurting her. So we just didn't really talk about it. My dad, on the other hand, is a very irrational person. Growing up, the reason why I think my sisters and I got really close was because we were always like watching out for each other so that we wouldn't get yelled at by my dad.
Yeah.
So we would always cover for each other. We would always like, just like when we needed to sneak out of the house, one of us would like flush the toilet so that you wouldn't hear the door.
Cover for each other.
Or the ice machine, you know. That's cute. It was really cute. We're like really close. We're really tight.
Wow.
That's like the one thing I like really miss about Ontario, is just like not being able to see them a lot. But my dad being really rational, I didn't come out to him until last year. No. Wow, pandemic time has thrown
There's
me off.
no time. What is time?
Before the pandemic.
Okay.
Before the pandemic, I like came out to my dad because I wanted to bring my like current partner to my sister's wedding. So I went home like a few months before, and then I like came out to him, but was like ready to like go to my sister's place right after, like had my bags packed and everything, because we all were like, he's gonna like not be happy. He's gonna walk into his bedroom, not say a word or something like that. Was like bawling, telling him, I was just like crying. I was like, so this is why I can never tell you that I'm bringing home a girlfriend or whatever, because I'm gay. And then he is just like, okay. And mid-cry, I kid you not, mid-cry, I was like, what? And my one sister's like, did you hear him? And then my other sister's just like, are you still drunk from like the like day? Like, because we had like a big celebration.
Yeah.
He's like, are you still drunk? And he's like, no, I think it's okay. Like it's fine. But I think it's like, it was like the distance of me not being home for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then it just like faded his like care for anything like that. And he just like was happy to see me. So we've gotten like closer in that sense. Like I'm able to call home and like have like my partner on the FaceTime call and stuff like that. And like he got to meet my partner. So yeah, they don't really know about my drag per se. I don't like, well, my mom, I told my mom about my drag, but I had to like, it was really funny because I remember me texting me this. I like told her, I was like, she kept asking like, how are you over there? Are you okay with money? Like, are you working like too hard? Like, do you need money? And I was like, no, I'm okay. And finally I was like, okay, so I just like go to the bar and like
Oh no, we lost a headphone.
I'm like, I go to the bar and like I perform, I'm on stage, and if people like me, they give me money, and I could see the look in her face, and I was like, oh no, she thinks I'm a stripper.
Which is totally okay to be a stripper.
Which is totally
but I
fine.
think
Totally fine.
Yeah.
But she like,
But
her face
I know
was
what you
just,
mean.
like, and I was like, let me just pull up some photos, and I showed her a bunch of like my drag, and I explained that it was like kind of like how because I was in musical theater in high school for a year. And so she had seen that show.
Musical theater. Yes.
Truly.
But the funny part is, I was in Grease the musical, and I was the like girl chasing character. I was Sunny, who's like girl crazy. So being the gay one in the entire cast, I was the straightest character.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Method acting.
Method, yes, incredible.
Yeah, but then I showed her that, and she kind of she's like understood more, and she was like, okay, as long as you're like good and you're happy, that's fine. My dad, I don't know if I'm ready to show him in knee and heels yet.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was one of the biggest learnings that I had over the past few years, since actually we started Love Intersections, was like this realization that like my parents are also they have their own journey in terms of figuring out like life, gender, sexuality, figuring out parenting, all of that stuff. And yeah, just, I don't know. It was a big growing thing for me of just recognizing, okay, yeah, my parents are also going through their own stuff too.
Well, it humanizes them. Like, I no longer see them
Yeah.
on this pedestal. Like, I see them as peers and human and flawed. I was having a conversation with my parents on the weekend, and they reminded me that, no, this was for my birthday, actually. So it was early May, and they called to wish me a happy birthday. And they reminded me that 35 was the year that my dad brought me to Canada. So I'm now at the age where when he immigrated, you know, not speaking a word of English and basically raising me on his own while my mom stayed behind in Taiwan to make money for us, right? I was like, whoa, that's, first of all, what is time? And then second of all, dealing with my own internal grief towards aging. Not that there's anything wrong with aging, but, you know, it's a
I was
thing.
also like, wait, you do not look 35.
I turned 35 this year.
Girl.
Girl.
You look stunning.
Thank you.
Like on over 23.
But yeah, it's a real trip to now I'm at that age. I remember also 35 was around the time when I was a kid. That was the first time where I came into awareness of age and like a number, you know, like 30 in like early 30s. And I attached that to my parents. Anyway, fascinating.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that too. But by this time, my dad had all three of us. I can't imagine having 3 kids at this age. I can barely take care of myself.
3 kids.
Right.
Kendall's family, there's like 5 or 6.
There's 5.
5, yeah.
But I think my mom must have been almost my age now, but with 3 kids. Like I would have just been born, which is wild.
My mom was
like
26.
I can't take care of myself sometimes, or like you know, I'm trying to like learn how to take care of myself, but I'm like 3 children, and then to have 2 more.
Yeah.
My mom was 26 when I was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you two? This is a conversation that Dave and I often talk about. Do you two want to have kids of your own?
Not. The idea really terrifies me, and I also like. I think so when I like started to, I don't have a very good relationship with my birth mom, and I think like when I was kind of like going through the thick of that as a teenager, I remember thinking like I'm gonna have kids and I'm gonna raise them and be like the best parent, and you know I'm gonna be like so much better than my parents, and now like kind of on the same like track of what we were just talking about, realizing like the humanity of your parents, and like now when you're becoming the age that they were when they went through this stuff, I'm like more and more realizing how difficult all of that was, and like realizing that it's like how dare I think that I could just like come in here and do this better. I'm terrified of the thought of having kids now, and I don't really want them because I look at my friends who have kids or like family members who have kids, and I'm like, that sucks. I'm gonna go traveling when this is all over. I'm gonna live my life and like do that. I don't know.
Also, the motivation to have kids, if the sole motivation to have kids is to prove a point, then I think that's
not
the wrong reason.
Which is what I've also realized. And like, I don't know. Yeah, when I look at the world, I don't want to bring people into this world. I would like to, like, I don't know. I love my drag mom. I love my community, and I can see myself maybe one day, even though like even that, I'm like I can't have drag kids, but like one day, you know, carrying that on and like being a good mentor and like a queer parent is like something that I would like to do. But I mean, I have 11, and that's already enough.
That's true. You already.
For me, I haven't really wanted kids at all. I think like when I was growing up, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have like a family and stuff. But like I think in my teens, I was like, no. Like for me, it's like it's kind of like pessimistic in a sense, but like I've seen how good kids around me, my peers who have surrounded themselves with bad people, And for me, it's like no matter how good you can like raise your kid, once they're exposed to their peers in school, and if those kids are not raised in or like are not the nicest kids or something like that, it really influences, and like it scares me to bring someone into a world and then have them get just like, no matter how much I'm gonna work for it and like work hard on it, it could just like be in the wrong school or the wrong like situation, and it just like that's scary. So I prefer to be a part-time parent and be the
She's a cool mom.
Yeah, like uncle to my nieces and nephews, and then a queer parent for these 11 people.
Amazing.
Oh,
yeah, hi the lag.
So I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to bring this conversation back to how we make art. And I think all four of us have made art together through Yellow Peril, Queer Destiny, the film, and then also other events and projects. But one of the things that I think is a common thread or a theme for all of us is that we engage with our own Asianness in the larger context. And so I thought, in thinking about, Kendell, you're half, and then, Van, you're Vietnamese. I'm wondering, and then both David and myself are Chinese, although I'm Taiwanese, technically, right? But there's all sorts of weird tensions there. So engaging with this idea of like Asianness, I'm also wondering about like the conversations, especially in this year with anti-Asian racism and xenophobia. The conversations of anti-Asian racism has been in the spotlight. It's in the public discourse. At the same time, it's largely centering East Asian and largely centering through that like Chinese, ness. I don't really have a question here. I'm just thinking about and thinking through, how do we have conversations about anti-Asian racism and also the like over-centering of Chinese identities, and how do we decenter Chinese? Because we don't hear about Vietnamese identities very often, at least not in the mainstream discourse.
I feel like there's a rise in like Vietnamese identity and Vietnamese culture coming to the mainstream slowly.
Yeah.
Like even in some like shows that I'm watching, they'll have like a Vietnamese like food cuisine or something in the show, or they'll have like, even if it's like BoJack. This is kind of a bad example in a sense. BoJack Horseman has like a Vietnamese character who's like a writer, and like they have a Vietnamese like family and like have this whole thing, only to find out that she's like voiced by a white actress, which kind of threw me off. When I found that, I was like, oh, that's odd. But having that identity like shown in like a cartoon that I loved, and like it was like a main character, was really cool. And just having like, even in Mean Girls, when there was like the two Vietnamese girls who are like bickering over Coach Carr, like just that like having that like 5-second conversation in Vietnamese, like my family and my sister and I were like, oh my god, replay that, I want to see that again. Like it's becoming more mainstream, but it definitely I feel like is overshadowed at times. And like I think we were talking in our pre-talk before, I didn't remember this because I've been doing so much like advocacy and like showcasing like my culture and stuff like that. But when you mentioned this, like I remembered feeling like I wanted to be Chinese or Korean when I was growing up. Because not that I wanted to specifically, but I wondered how it would be if my life would be different, how different it would be if I had more access to like different communities and different friendships. I think because there were a lot more Chinese people in my schools and like Korean people, and just seeing like the big mainstream like Chinese pop and Korean pop, like K-pop. Like I did listen to a lot of K-pop in high school. And then seeing like the Vietnamese kind of like try and follow suit, and it just didn't sound great in my opinion at the time. And for me, it just felt like my culture was just trying to copy K-pop. And it was kind of like weird for me. But I think like now they've like found their own like their own voice and their own like sound. And I'm like really like proud of my culture and like proud of like being Vietnamese now, and I would not change it for the world.
Yeah.
But I definitely did have like moments growing up that like I felt like I wasn't in the main, like in the majority, I guess, because I still was proud to be Asian. I never faltered in terms of wanting to be white or anything like that. I like loved Asian culture. I always thought Asians were more attractive, so I never had that like I'm not attractive kind of thing. So like I definitely was always like very happy in that sense, but then being in like the minority within the Asian like the span of like cultures, that was kind of like disheartening, I think, or like demotivating. But like now I like would not change it for the world.
Yeah, I've also noticed that we were Jen and I were talking about this earlier too, like you know, being Chinese, and then also now over the past recently seeing a lot more representation of other Asian identities in media and whatnot. I've noticed that a lot, that people don't just assume that I'm from China, for example. I was telling Jen this story when I went to go get my COVID shot. So if you go to the convention center to get your COVID shot, the staff there are people in tourism that have been laid off, right? So they're, you know, I'm mentioning this because I know that they're trying to be very, very friendly. But I was waiting in line, hospitable, right? But I was waiting in line, and the guy was like, "Are you Korean?" And I was like, "No, I'm Chinese." And he pulled the ni hao, right? I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh my god!
It's the worst.
Hey,
First, I guess.
he just, you know, it wasn't just like, "Are you Chinese?" It was like, "Oh, you thought, you know, that there's other Asian identities out there."
I wonder if he had just learned how to say hello in Korean, so he was like, "Oh, maybe I can test this out. Are you Korean?"
Probably, yeah.
And it's always so funny when white people say hello in Korean. They always over enunciate "안녕하세요," and it's all very exaggerated. Anyway, I digress.
Oh my god,
It's so funny.
But Kendell, do you get that misreading from strangers and people
About my ethnicity?
Yeah, and when you're traveling or just with strangers in general.
I think like all my life, I usually, instead of it's like, people aren't like, "Are you Chinese?" or "Are you Korean?" It's like, "What are you?
What are you?
What are you? Where are you from? But where are you really from?" And I think like, obviously, because I'm mixed, like my mom is white, my dad's Chinese, but so there is sort of like a bit of like an ambiguity in terms of like facial features and skin tone and all these kind of things. But so, yeah, I mean, it either ranges from like a just direct, like, "What are you? Where are you from?" Or then it's like, sometimes it's like a guessing game where they'll be like, "Okay, are you this? Are you this?" And it'll kind of like go through a list. So yeah, I guess it's like, but also shockingly enough, I guess like sometimes it's not even Chinese isn't their like first assumption. Yeah. And actually, I mean, I guess like, I've had a lot of people be like, I'll say I'm Chinese and they'll be like, "Really?"
Right, they don't believe you.
It's like, they don't believe me. And I'm like, I don't, I mean, I'm not here to prove it to you.
Yeah. And then there's me when people are like, "Are you Korean?" I'm like, "Yeah." I just like, if it's complete stranger that I literally know I'm not gonna see again, I'll just like sometimes just like fuck with them and just like, "Oh yeah." I just like agree and just like try and get out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah, the exit strategy.
I'm like, I don't want to say no and then have to explain what I am and talk to you further. Like, this is already a necessary question, so I'm just gonna get out of there.
Yeah. I used to. So when I was living in Cape Town, I mean, there's just not, the Asian population is just so small, and then on top of that, like, I have a very like CBC look. So, and the Asians that are there just are international students, you know, just don't look the way or dress the way that I looked. So people would just, you know, strike up conversation and also say like, "Oh, are you from China?" And then I'd say no. And then they would be like, "Okay, your accent is American, so you must be American," right? And I'm like, "No." So I sometimes used to do, because then it's a whole explanation. So I used to do the same, like when I was there, like, "Oh, are you from China?" "Yes, I'm from China." "Okay, bye." Like, I'm wondering, we are slowly running out of time, but I'm curious. I want to get into stuff you guys have upcoming. What do you guys have any? Yeah, upcoming shows or projects or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we worked on a photo project for a magazine over the pandemic, which was really it was a really fun project. It's a magazine called Headmaster, and they're based out of Rhode Island, and they basically give like an assignment for their issue to like a bunch of different groups of artists or individual artists, and then you interpret the assignment and then submit basically your project. So that's coming out next month.
I think it's they said late June, early July. They just emailed about we just had a contact, and like I feel like it's gonna be probably like mid-July that they're gonna launch, because I think they're bringing it to the print sometime soon in this week or so. But it was like a beautiful project. It's so the theme of this issue is collaboration, so that's why they reached out to the house, because it's like a big group of us collaborating together. So all of the projects will be between like multiple artists instead of just a solo artist. And our assignment was to create a queer zodiac. And yeah, so we kind of just like, had a little fun and made ourselves as goddesses and goddesses.
It was really fun.
Are you allowed to say which horoscope you were? Each of you were?
No, we made our own.
Oh my
And
God.
we created like an individual character with a symbol, and like I guess we can give it. It follows a lunar calendar cycle, so each of us is sort of like representative of a different moon phase, and then like a lore that we built behind it, and then we did like a photo shoot representing that character's story. And we also have these like little trading cards, sort of like mini cards that has like also your horoscope like alignments and stuff on it. And if you're like if you're born under this moon phase, you should fall into this person. And we even like had names for our sign as well as our what we represented. And then those signs were most of those signs were based off of a word in our specific language. So mine was Nahua, which is Vietnamese for blossom. Because I'm the goddess of impermanence, and which is like change and evolution. And like we just like chose names that like resonated with our culture ourselves.
Is this proprietary? Can we make merch with the lunar calendar?
I mean, I think the contract said our image is ours. Probably we should
look into it.
We'll look into it.
Yeah.
This is such a great idea for the Mao calendar too.
I know.
It's like illustration.
We'll do next year. We can't take on new projects until next year.
I mean, I do want to make a website and have like all House of Rice merch and stuff eventually.
Incredible.
And then I guess the Mural Fest is on.
So the Vancouver Mural Fest, my date is August 6th. So it's going to be House of Rice performances, but it's also going to be like a mini Ricecake. And it's around Pride. It's around when Pride should be. So we're calling it Ricecake Excess Pride. So it's going to have like a couple DJs. It'll have performances. It's going to be an all ages ticketed shows. So we can bring in the queer Asian youth to come check it out. It'll be really cute.
Oh, cool.
And then me and Skim are going to be in the Transform Cabaret closing bash, which is part of the Transform Cabaret Festival. So that'll be, I think, and I'm in it as well, but in a Darlings capacity. So we're doing a film for that. Raider.
I'm giving other host members opportunities.
I support her.
It's not a competition.
Well, speaking of competition, I don't know if we have time to get fully into it. I want to know if you two ever have like creative differences or fights, or how do you navigate conflict? No, never.
I feel like we will like build off of each other, or like point out if like something's like, oh, I don't think this will work, and then provide an idea or suggestion, and then the other one's always like, oh my god, and then we can do this, and then this, and then this.
I don't think there's ever been a point where if you've criticized something, or if I've criticized, like, if we've critiqued something or like put out a thought, it has never turned into like a conflict where it's been like
we've always been like building on whatever we put out.
I think it's like also like we recognize like what each other do, and like you recognize sort of like what is my style and I recognize what's your style.
Yeah.
So when we're critiquing what we're doing, we're also coming to the table with like, I'm not trying to tell you to be me,
Yeah.
and vice
Ever.
versa,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And then we also, I think, recognize our strengths that ourselves we don't like think about it sometimes. Be like, oh my God, you could do this because this is what you would normally do. And then she would be like, oh my God, I could do that. Like we bring up things that sometimes like because we're too in our own thought of our own performances that we forget about the possibilities that we can do ourselves, that the other person usually like can suggest things that as an objective person.
Yeah. I don't think we've had any like big serious fights.
I don't think we've had any fights.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever fought
yet.
Actually, we just got news today. This is we can't really say much about it, but it's a little teaser that in August we might be doing like an exhibition like performance. A huge like.
Are we allowed to say where? I don't even know.
No. I asked.
It's really exciting.
Okay, so
we don't want to jinx it.
Okay, no jinx.
But I think in August. Yeah. It's
amazing.
huge. We were told today, and we're like.
Yeah.
Exciting.
I literally was like, can I just tell everyone today? And then like Skim, the one who's like leading this, was like, no, let's not jinx it.
But it'll have like
but it's huge.
Some rotational installation stuff, and then also some performances, and in a gallery kind of setting. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Amazing.
It's really cool.
Is Pride stuff happening?
Pride stuff is happening. I just don't know what capacity. Like I know the Vancouver Pride, what do they call it? The Society. They're doing both like online and in-person programming. I'm not involved in any of it, so at first I was kind of like, oh, everyone forgot about me over the pandemic. but I'm also fine to not, because I just like kind of want to enjoy myself.
We also just listed
all these things that we're doing.
That were like really big projects that I'm exhausted from.
Truly. But yeah, I mean, like I know like Eastside Studios doesn't have like a venue because that's like a large scale kind of production thing, and that's not really happening. But I think there's like small things. It's just not to the usual capacity.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like treating the Vancouver Mural Festival as like my Pride gig, even though it's not really associated with it. I just know it's around the same time, but if things are even open, I would rather relax and like enjoy this week. I've been working full time this entire time, so I'm like, I don't want to be performing for a whole week straight.
That too.
So we're winding down to our time. I'm wondering if you two have questions for us. This was such an enjoyable. This was so lovely. I don't know why I was worried.
I know, same. I was like, right before like this started, I was like looking at Kendall, I was like, oh my God, I'm nervous.
Yeah, we're always so nervous, and then we over-prepare.
Yeah.
I literally studied my Hotpots. I was like texting my sisters. I'm like, wait, have we had this Hotpot before?
Oh my God, that's so cute. I
was like getting ready to have Hotpot, so I have behind the camera, everything is set up for us to have Hotpot after this.
Oh, amazing.
No.
Cool.
So thank you for bringing Hotpot to us.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Jen, should we announce our next guests for next week? Yeah. Next week we have Karima Shalouf, who is a nutritionist. We're going to talk about food. We actually connected with her because she runs the Instagram handle, Hey, Have You Eaten? And when we had put out our tote, she DM'd us. So we connected, and she does a lot of really amazing work on food facilitation, and diaspora. So we're really excited to talk to her. All right.
Great. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.